Janelle Carter never expected her life to change at her engagement party. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, celebration of love. A gathering of friends and family, the moment she would look back on for years to come. But instead of joy and laughter, it turned into a nightmare. Her mother slapped her across the face in front of everyone. Why? Because Janelle refused to give her sister Toni $40,000 of her hard-earned wedding fund. It all started 7 years ago. Janelle was 22 and fresh out of college, ready to start her life. She had always been the responsible one in the family, the one who did everything by the book. While her younger sister, Toni, seemed to get away with anything, Janelle worked hard. She had a clear plan for her future. And she wasn't going to let anything or anyone stop her. Janelle worked long hours as a clinical pharmacologist. She had a demanding job with tight deadlines and long shifts, but she also had 2 part-time jobs to help her save. Every penny counted. She wasn't just saving for a rainy day. She was saving for a dream of a beautiful, well-planned wedding. A wedding that wasn't about show or grandeur, but about what mattered most to her: love, commitment, and the future she would build with Marcus, her fiancé. Unlike Toni, who bounced from one disaster to another, Janelle had everything carefully planned. Toni, who was 3 years younger, had never had to work hard for anything in her life. When she failed a class, it was always the teacher's fault. When she wrecked a car, insurance covered it. When she got fired from a job, it was because the boss didn't like her. But no one ever asked Toni to take responsibility. It was always on Janelle to clean up the messes Toni made, whether it was financial or emotional. Janelle worked for everything she had. She took extra shifts, helped her parents when they needed it, and even picked up odd jobs to make ends meet. She graduated college with little debt compared to the thousands many of her classmates had accumulated. She didn't spend money on expensive clothes or luxurious vacations. She was frugal, focused, and determined. By 29, she had saved $75,000. A sum that would fund her wedding, a day that would finally be about her. Enter Marcus Wallace, the man who would become her husband. They met at a pharmaceutical innovation symposium, and it was clear from the start that Marcus was different. He was smart, calm, and had his own well-defined goals. He respected Janelle's hard work and planning. When their relationship became serious, she told him about her savings. He was impressed and even offered to contribute to the wedding fund. But Janelle made it clear this $75,000 was hers. It was her sweat, her sacrifice, her future. Marcus respected that, but not everyone in her family shared that respect. Toni's latest venture had been a disaster. She had decided to launch a boutique event planning business despite having no experience or clients. She didn't have a solid business plan, nor did she seem to understand the risks involved. In less than 8 months, Toni had burned through $25,000 in startup money, maxed out 2 credit cards, and was now being sued by a bride who claimed Toni ruined her wedding by forgetting key details. As always, their parents, especially their mother Loretta, had bailed Toni out. And now it was time for Janelle to be asked for help. It started with subtle phone calls. Loretta would ask about Janelle's wedding planning, asking if she had found a venue or what her color scheme was. It all seemed innocent at first, but Janelle could tell something was coming. She had always been close to her mother, but she knew all too well how Loretta had a soft spot for Toni, when Toni couldn't take responsibility for her own actions. Their mother would step in and clean up the mess. The phone calls continued. Then came the text messages, each one a little more desperate. "Toni is having a hard time," Loretta would say. "She just needs a little help. We're just asking for a small loan to help her get back on her feet." Janelle had heard it all before. Her mother didn't want a loan. She wanted Janelle to give up part of her hard-earned wedding fund. Toni didn't need help to get back on her feet. She needed to learn responsibility. But Loretta didn't see it that way. The day of the engagement party arrived, and it was supposed to be perfect. The venue was booked, The food was ordered, and Janelle had everything planned down to the smallest detail. It was at Eastwood Terrace, a beautiful estate outside of Richmond, and everything looked magical. Janelle wore a simple blush-tone dress that made her feel like a queen, and Marcus looked dashing in his dark green suit. The guests were arriving, her friends from all over the country. And her parents were there too. But from the moment Loretta and Tony arrived, Janelle could sense something was wrong. Her mother's eyes scanned the room, studying the decor, the food, the flowers. Janelle felt like she was being examined, like everything she had worked for was being scrutinized. Tony barely said hello. She was too busy looking nervously between Janelle and their mother. Janelle tried to shake off the feeling. She greeted her guests and mingled with friends. But it wasn't long before Loretta pulled her aside. The conversation started out innocent enough. Loretta asked how everything was going with the wedding planning, and Janelle answered politely. But then it shifted. Loretta looked at Janelle with a strained smile. "Janelle, sweetheart," she said, her voice tight. "Tony's in a bit of trouble. We were hoping you could help her out." Janelle's heart sank. She knew what was coming. Tony stepped up behind their mother, her arms folded, looking almost ashamed. "I messed up," Tony admitted, "but I didn't mean for it to happen. I just need a little help." And that's when Loretta made the request. She wanted Janelle to give Tony $40,000 of her wedding fund. "It's just temporary," Loretta pleaded. "You're getting married. You're starting your new life. Tony needs this to get back on her feet." Janelle's stomach twisted. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't just a simple request. It was a demand, one that threatened to take away everything she had worked for. She had earned that money through years of hard work, and now her mother and sister wanted to take it all away. "Sorry," Janelle said, her voice steady but firm, "that's not going to happen." Loretta's face went pale, and Tony's eyes narrowed. The words that followed weren't kind. They were accusations. "You're so selfish," Loretta said, her voice rising. "How could you just sit there planning your fancy wedding while your sister is drowning?" Janelle's chest tightened. "Not responsible for her mistakes," she said, keeping her voice calm, though inside she was boiling with anger. Then Loretta did something Janelle never expected. She slapped her across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the garden, and for a moment Janelle didn't know what to do. She felt this sting on her cheek and the rush of humiliation flood her body. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the betrayal. Her mother had hit her at her own engagement party. In front of everyone, the shock of it all left her standing there, stunned, as Loretta and Tony turned away, afraid someone might have seen it. But Janelle wasn't afraid. She was done. The slap still burned on Janelle's cheek as she stood there in shock, surrounded by her friends, family, and the lingering silence of what had just happened. It felt like everything in her life had shifted in that moment. Her mother had hit her, not just in anger, but in front of everyone. It wasn't just the slap that hurt, it was the betrayal, the crushing realization that the people who were supposed to love and support her were willing to destroy everything she had worked for. Janelle could hear the muffled whispers from the guests around the garden. Some pretended to look at the sky, others looked down, avoiding eye contact. But Janelle didn't care anymore. The shock still echoed in her ears, but a fire was igniting inside her, something stronger than any pain or shame. She wasn't going to let this slide, not anymore. Marcus, her fiancé, came rushing over, his tall frame standing between Janelle and her mother. "What just happened?" he asked, voice filled with disbelief and concern. Janelle didn't speak immediately. Her mind was racing, but as the moments passed, she knew what she had to do. "Did she just hit you?" Marcus asked again, his voice shaking with anger. "I'm fine," Janelle whispered, though she wasn't fine. Far from it. But Marcus didn't let it go. "You're not fine," he said, his eyes locking with Loretta's. "This isn't okay." Her mother, Loretta, looked almost smug, as though she expected Janelle to just forgive her, to move on like everything was fine. But Janelle knew she couldn't go back to how things were. Not after what just happened. And that's when it hit. Her mother didn't care about her boundaries, about her feelings, or about the sacrifices Janelle had made to get where she was. All she cared about was using Janelle's success to fix the problems her other daughter had created. But Janelle had spent her entire life cleaning up mess after mess after mess. She was done. "I'm calling the police," Janelle said suddenly, her voice eerily calm. She was done feeling helpless. She was done feeling guilty for putting herself first. Everyone around them froze. There were gasps from the guests, whispers spreading like wildfire. It wasn't just a slap anymore. It was an assault, an invasion of her personal space and her trust. And Janelle was not going to let it go. "You can't be serious," Tony said, her voice trembling. She looked like she was about to cry, but Janelle wasn't moved. Tony had no idea what it was like to fight for something and have it taken away in an instant. "No," Tony, Janelle replied. "You and Mom already ruined everything." With steady hands, Janelle pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and reported the assault. As she spoke to the dispatcher, her whole body shook with adrenaline. But there was a calmness inside her that she had never felt before. This was her moment. This was where everything changed. "I'm at Eastwood Terrace," Janelle said, her voice even. "I'd like to report an assault. My mother slapped me across the face in front of several witnesses." The dispatcher took down the details calmly, assuring her that officers would be on their way. Meanwhile, Loretta and Tony were whispering frantically to each other, trying to make it all go away. Her father, Malcolm, had finally come over after hearing the commotion. He looked between Janelle and Loretta, clearly confused about what had just happened. "Janelle, this is ridiculous," Malcolm said, his voice defensive. "Your mother didn't mean to do that. She just lost control." "Lost control," Janelle repeated, shaking her head. "No, Dad. She meant it. And this is not okay. I'm done cleaning up your messes." Marcus stayed close to her, rapping, his arms around her for support. But Janelle's resolve was growing stronger with each passing second. She had always been the responsible one, the one who picked up the pieces for everyone else, but not anymore. This time, she wasn't going to let her mother make her feel guilty. A few minutes later, the police arrived. 2 cruisers pulled into the parking lot and 4 officers stepped out, including Officer Nia James. She was a tall black woman who approached Janelle calmly, her voice professional but kind. "We received a report of an assault, officer," James said. "Can you identify the assailant?" Janelle pointed to her mother, who stood off to the side, looking stiff and defensive under the gazebo. Loretta wasn't sorry. She wasn't trying to apologize or make amends. She was just angry that she had been caught. The officers took Janelle's statement first, and then they asked Tasha, Janelle's best friend, to send over the video she had recorded. The police also spoke to Marcus and a few guests who had witnessed the scene. Janelle could see her mother arguing with Officer James, trying to downplay the whole situation. But the officer wasn't having any of it. "She's my daughter," Loretta said. "I didn't hurt her. She's exaggerating." "Oh, really?" Officer James asked, raising an eyebrow. "Do you think it's okay to hit someone in public?" "Especially your daughter," Loretta huffed, refusing to back down. "She just wouldn't help her sister, and I lost my temper." "Well, that doesn't give you the right to hit her," Officer James said firmly. "This is assault, and you need to be accountable for it." Within minutes, Loretta was in handcuffs. Janelle could see the rage in her mother's eyes as she was led away, but she didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel sad. She felt free as the officers took her mother to the police car. Loretta hissed, "You've destroyed this family." Janelle didn't flinch. She looked her mother in the eye and said softly, "No, I'm finally freeing myself from it." The rest of the evening was a blur. The engagement party was canceled. The food sat untouched. The champagne never popped. But Janelle didn't care. She was numb, but in a good way. For the first time in her life, she was standing up for herself, and it felt empowering. The next morning, her phone buzzed with messages from her family. They all wanted to know what had happened, why Loretta had been arrested, and why Janelle had pressed charges. But one message stood out from the rest. It was from her father. "You made your point. Now drop the charges or you're no longer welcome in this family." Janelle stared at the message, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what she had to do. She blocked his number. There was no going back now. She had crossed a line, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid to stand alone. Later, Officer Nia James called with an update. Loretta had been released on bail, but the police had found something else. Stoney's business troubles were worse than they thought. She had multiple civil cases linked to her failed business venture. Janelle's stomach dropped. She had been right all along. Janelle didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She was no longer willing to sacrifice herself for anyone. She had built her life with her own two hands, and now, for the first time, she was building her boundaries. The old Janelle was gone, and in her place was someone who was no longer afraid to say no.